It's such a pleasure to be with you right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and with me is my colleague Sandeep Gurumurthi. It's give an inch and take a mile for the Modi government. The strategy of BJP's floor managers to allow a no-confidence motion has ensured that the monsoon session has been a very productive one in the recent times. Between the two houses of parliament, 11 bills have got the green light in the matter of 17 days of sitting, actually 21. The list includes some of the crucial economic legislation like amendments to the State Bank Act, the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, amendment to the IBC. Interestingly, the productivity of the Lok Sabha in the current session, which comes to an end today, has been 110% thanks to the extended debate on the no-confidence motion.
Misses the triple Talaq bill figures prominently, with both the treasury and opposition benches blaming each other for the mess up. The BJP says Rahul Gandhi is directly responsible for stalling the bill, while the Congress wants it to be referred to the Select Committee of Parliament. The hits and misses of the monsoon session, that's the topic of discussion tonight on the India Development Debate. Okay, and joining us on the show this evening is a wonderful panel. We've got Chakshu Roy, Head of Outreach at PRS Legislative Research, Neerja Chaudhary, Political Commentator and Columnist, Sagarika Ghosh, Consulting Editor, Times of India. We've also got Syed Zafar Islam, National Spokesperson of the BJP, and making his debut on the India Development Debate is Kumar Ketkar, Member Rajya Sabha, representing the Congress Party. Thank you all so much for joining us on the India Development Debate. Mr. Ketkar, if I could start off with you, it was one of the most successful sessions for the Modi government since the 2017 budget session, as productivity for the Lok Sabha exceeded 100% and that of Rajya Sabha hovering around the 70% mark. Will you give credit to the government for agreeing to debate and subsequently move ahead with the vote on no confidence motion, which in a sense paved for such a productive session of Parliament?
Well, actually, you cannot question the credit or credibility of particular government or particular party in this context, because we have to see the sessions in succession and not segregate one session's productivity, one session's success as distinct from other sessions. Last session was almost completely washed out because the government itself did not want no confidence motion to be discussed at all. In this session they allowed, but last session was completely washed out, and those bills which were, many of them were pending, came to this particular session. And therefore, to say that 120% success of Lok Sabha this particular session and 70% success in Rajya Sabha should be compared with the earlier sessions where the failure was much more. And more important, all those bills which were successful, triple Talaq bill has not been fully presented in Rajya Sabha. It has not been discussed in Rajya Sabha, though they have climbed down according to sources, but we have not seen the draft, so I cannot talk on triple Talaq bill. The point is that Parliamentary Affairs Minister and Chairman of Rajya Sabha did not conduct the parliamentary affairs the way they should, and therefore Rajya Sabha most of the time was quite adjourned, and suddenly in the last 5 days they tried to pass most of the bills and so-called 70% success came. But chairman should not have adjourned so many sessions at the drop of a hat. If Trinamool Congress or Telugu Desam, somebody comes to the well and immediately he would adjourn the session, but last 2 days he realized that so many bills are pending, he could not adjourn, and therefore he carried on despite the house was in complete disorder. There was total chaos for 2 days in Rajya Sabha, and yet he carried on thinking that he will be able to pass the bill. One of the reasons why triple Talaq bill could not be presented in Rajya Sabha is because of the mishandling of the Parliamentary Affairs Minister and Chairman of Rajya Sabha.
Fair point. Okay. Mr. Ketkar, you made an important point there, that the session functioned because the government ceded to the demand of the opposition to have a no confidence motion. The reason why it did not function in the budget session was that the government was adamant of not letting a no confidence be tabled. Zafar Islam, the question obviously will come your way in response. Could the BJP have agreed to discuss and debate the opposition-sponsored no-confidence motion in the budget session itself? We perhaps would have seen some productive legislation happen there. We could have saved a lot of time, money and disruptions that were because we saw repeated adjournments there. Looking back in hindsight, do you believe you could have perhaps been more flexible during the budget session and we could have perhaps averted a washout then? Because this one's been productive.
Supriya, let me ask you a counter question, and I think this question needs to be posed to the opposition party and their spokesperson. Then was it really necessary for to move a confidence motion? Where they went fall flat, completely flat on their face after the no, I'm saying, I know, I'm posing this question to the opposition party, but this was totally unwarranted. The no confidence motion was totally unwarranted, and Congress and all other opposition parties actually fell flat on their face. And Congress particularly not once, twice in less than 1 month. Even yesterday's election has only suggests that Congress strategy has completely failed and they completely stand exposed. It was not warranted. But given the intensity what the opposition had shown, we felt that it is important that to see this behind us, because we are absolutely clear about about proving our majority on the floor of the parliament. Yet with that's why we decided to let it happen in the first day itself, and then we will move on to the business, and that's why it has become a very productive one of the productive session because the productivity of Lok Sabha was 110% and
why did you not do it in budget session?
And in terms of the number of bills we have passed 14.
No, but only one point.
As I said, it's something it was unwarranted, but the fixation of the opposition parties, it was something which only exposed them. By moving this bill, what had happened? They stand exposed today.
Quick rebuttal from Kumar Ketkar, and then I'm going to Sagarika. Quick rebuttal from you, Kumar Ketkar, very quickly, sir.
Madam, only one point. Madam, only one sentence. The so-called warranted or unwarranted question doesn't arise. It was submitted by Telugu Desam, which was part of the NDA. Congress did not. So NDA partner Telugu Desam had actually started the no confidence motion debate. Not Congress. Other opposition parties joined. And even then the BJP did not allow in the last session. So you cannot say that the opposition was raising the issue unwarranted.
Sir, Mr. Ketkar, you are fully aware that it is Congress. It is Congress which was actually instrumental and the real architect of moving the no confidence motion.
Telugu Desam
I know Telugu Desam has moved.
Gentlemen, I don't want the gentleman to hijack the show. Let me take it to the ladies as well. Sagarika, monsoon session saw the passage of 21 laws. This was, I mean, politics aside, more productive and satisfactory than the budget session and many of the other sessions in recent past. It started off at the height of the lynching debate, but we still saw our lawmakers go ahead and pass bills. Did the monsoon session in some sense help balance the rhetoric which is necessary in a democracy with productive legislation, which is what all of us want as citizens of this country?
Absolutely, Sandeep. I think we saw a parliament that functioned. We saw on a daily basis give and take between the government and the opposition as we were monitoring the session. We saw a lot of constructive legislation being passed. The government quietly got a lot of legislation done. It got a lot of work done, got a lot of legislative business out of the way. In a way, the no confidence motion, which the government wasn't prepared for in the budget session, because in the budget session it was less sure of itself. It was coming in with those by-election defeats. There were Dalit protests all over the country. It was less sure of itself. This time it wanted to showcase its achievements. The government is in election mode, the opposition is in election mode, so it allowed the no confidence motion, and in a way the opposition played into the government's hands by agreeing to the no confidence motion right at the beginning of the session. So the government was very cleverly able to get that out of the way. So they sailed through that opposition no confidence motion. They in fact then deprived the opposition of ammunition. The question could be asked, did the opposition fire its gun too early? Because in a way it had no ammunition left for the rest of the session, and the government quietly passed a number of bills and actually got a lot of legislative business done. The contrast is interesting this time, Sandeep and Supriya. The government came into this session looking defensive after Karnataka, after the Mahagathbandhan, after the federal leaders had all posed together at H.D. Kumaraswamy swearing in. The government was defensive, the opposition was aggressive, the opposition was buoyant, it was united, it was going in on the front foot. But now at the end of this session, we find opposition unity in tatters. We find the government buoyant, because we have seen in that poll for the deputy chairperson's post of the Rajya Sabha, as your reporter pointed out, their opposition unity completely fell apart. We saw how flexible oppositions are, the flexible alliances are, the Biju Janata Dal voting with the government, the TRS voting with the government. So the opposition now looking like a house divided, it's lost momentum, it needs to get back its mojo. Government gets buoyant.
Sagarika, just give me a minute, because I think we've got an entire segment on opposition unity versus an NDA that seems to have been successful to keep its flock together. We'll touch upon that in just a bit, but we've also got Chakshu Roy with us. And Chakshu, this session has been politically eventful. We had the no confidence motion, the first against a brute majority government of this kind. There was an election to the post of the deputy chairman, won hands down by the NDA. Then there were protests over Rafale, and I think an offshoot of that was how Rafale is now being discussed in public space. There was a huge, row over NRC. But how would you term this session in terms of legislative productivity? Yes, 21 bills, and the kind of bills were important. But how would you assess legislation versus some of the big political events that kept erupting all through the session? And a very short one at that.
17 days, it was supposed to be an 18-day session, one day went entirely into the no confidence motion, and, one day the House adjourned to pay respects to Mr. Karunanidhi. But if you look at the amount of legislative business that was crammed into the session, two things come out. The first is the level of bipartisanship that was between the Treasury and the opposition benches, where they were able to get a number of legislation through. While there have been reports about the fact that there are a lot of social legislation that went through. At the beginning of the segment, you also talked about the fact that there's a number of important economic legislation that's gone through. There was an arbitration bill that was passed by Lok Sabha today. There was a specific relief bill, the Fugitive Economic Offender Bill. There were 3 GST amendments. So in terms of just the sheer volume of work, there was a fair bit of work that was done. What I would have liked to see a little bit more was if some of this legislative business could also have been passed through the parliamentary standing committees, because the number of bills that were introduced in the session and then passed within the session itself, without them going to the committees, also increased.
That's a good point you're making. So that's an important point. Even as we welcome the fact that it's been a productive session, that's an important point to watch out for. Neerja, I want to pick up on the point that Sagarika made, the politics of it. In some sense, do you believe this session has been a setback for the opposition? They lost the no confidence motion quite badly. They lost the election for the deputy chairman post, appeared to be in a bit of a disarray. So apart from some speeches during the no confidence motion, the opposition was largely unnoticeable.
I wouldn't say that, I just start off by saying what a friend was reminding me this evening is what Pranab Mukherjee used to say about the effective functioning of Parliament, that the opposition has its say and the government has its way in getting legislation passed. And both things happened, and I think wiser counsels prevailed in the government when they allowed a no confidence motion. It's the right of the opposition to put the government on the mat. And a no confidence motion, you can speak about any subject under the sun and criticize the government, which is what the opposition did. And probably was the high point of Rahul Gandhi's attack against Narendra Modi and the government, followed by this Jappi, followed by the wink, which all added interesting aspects to the whole debate. But once the opposition had let off steam, they were willing to cooperate, and a lot of legislation got through. So the bills were passed, the government was made accountable, which is really what Parliament is all about. So it's true that no confidence motion was not the opposition didn't think they are going to win it. But yes, the deputy chairperson's election is where the opposition was found wanting, because the numbers were on their side. And I think they didn't get their act together in time. They didn't, I think they didn't exhibit killer instinct. There's nobody in charge on the opposition side to say, okay, so-and-so is not working as a possible common candidate. What is the second step? What is the third step? What is the fourth step? To move that whole process onwards. Whereas the government got its act together, you know, they were not having the election because they were nervous to begin with. And then they managed to rope in the non-aligned parties, BJD and TRS, and the scales tipped in their favor. So I think this lack of management on the side of the opposition was a weak point that came across during this session of Parliament.
Yes, I think lack of coordination, and I would also say a lack of killer instinct, you know, the desire to win. But let me take this across to Kumar Ketkar, who is a member of the House of Elders. And Mr. Ketkar, at the end of the day, was the no confidence motion a setback for the Congress party? Was it a correct decision to rally behind this? I mean, even during the deputy chairman election for once that we saw, you could not win over PDP, over YSRCP, and also the Aam Aadmi Party. The Aam Aadmi Party actually went on to say, the two MPs in Rajya Sabha went on to say that they expected a phone call from Rahul Gandhi, which would have moved them in, you know, in the favor of the opposition's candidate. Where did you go wrong? Was there lack of coordination, and which is what really tipped the scale in favor of you know, the consensus candidate that the NDA could come up with? Because he wasn't a BJP candidate, he was actually a JDU candidate. And that marks a lot of difference there.
Well, actually, you can't combine the two, because in the no confidence motion, we never discuss about how Shiv Sena left abstained, BJD abstained, TRS abstained, Telugu Desam was not with the in no confidence because they had started the no confidence debate itself. So actually the NDA was cracking up, but when opposition unity does not work out, immediately opposition is in tatters, opposition is in absolute strategyless. But when actually ruling alliance, NDA, was actually tattering in the no confidence motion. And the question about the deputy chairman's election, the issue is, ideally deputy chairman is selected by consensus. That is the job of a parliamentary affairs minister and the government. They failed completely in that, but now obviously opposition knew that they did not have numbers. Even if the parties that you mentioned, even if they had joined, it was bound to lose. Deputy chairman would have been definitely of the BJP candidate or BJP supported candidate. That was quite obvious. So I think when opposition can't unite, it is in tatters, and NDA cannot keep together, it is successful just because they won the vote. I don't understand this kind of dubious logic most of the people have while talking about the NDA or the BJP. It is shown as strategically hugely successful and opposition completely unsuccessful. I don't want to comment on success or lack of success. The question is, deputy chairman could have been selected by consensus, that the BJP failed.
Okay.
In Congress regime or UPA regime, it was possible.
Okay. Shagarika, I'm going to let you counter your friend Kumar Ketkar there. You know, so he's saying, why are we being uncharitable to the opposition? But the fact of the matter is, like you pointed out, this session in some sense exposed the fact that the opposition doesn't have the kind of unity that people thought it would have. And the larger point, what makes the BJP click, you know, whether it is elections outside the house or inside the house, where does the Congress sort of lose out? You know, first the no confidence motion, then the deputy chair of the Rajya Sabha. But in some sense, does the session again prove the point that you've been making as well, that the BJP continues to be the party that's hungry for power, for victory, and will do whatever it takes to win?
Very right, Sandeep. I do want to counter my friend Kumar, because I believe that, you know, the BJP fights every battle, and it fights it, as Supriya said, with the killer instinct. The fact is, at the end of the day, Mr. Modi is a very, very astute politician, and he's realized that his weakness are the allies. The allies are sending out strong messages that we are feeling neglected, we are feeling ignored by you. Remember, he has accepted a JDU candidate, and Mr. Harivansh, who was the JDU nominee for the deputy chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, is not just an amiable, benevolent face. He is a stringent, trenchant socialist critic, personal critic of Mr. Narendra Modi. So Mr. Modi, who has not given a single JDU given the JDU a single ministerial berth, has actually accepted a critical voice from the JDU as the deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha. So, you know, the BJP is politically very nimble. It's realized the allies are restive. It's realized the allies are feeling ignored. They are forming their own federal front. Mr. Modi himself rang up Naveen Patnaik. Mr. Nitish Kumar rang up Aam Aadmi Party. Aam Aadmi Party and Rahul Gandhi cannot patch up. So, you know, if the opposition is relying on a federal front, Mr. Modi is crafting his own federal front. And he's realized that the needs of the hour is now to reach out to the allies. Remember, it's win-win for the regional parties, which is why we're not seeing any pre-poll alliances. Mamata Banerjee may say that, you know, I'm against BJP and I'm with Congress, but she's not having any seat sharing. She's contesting all 42 seats in West Bengal. So, you know, my theory for the opposition parties is that they're all going to contest every seat that they can. It's every man for himself, every woman for himself. After the results, maybe they will see about alliances. Right now, the alliances are very, very flexible. So, I think the opposition has to think very, very carefully which issue is it going to attack the Narendra Modi government on. Is it going to attack the Modi government on lynching? Is it going to attack on NRC? Is it going to attack on Rafale? Right. Is it going to attack, you know, an analyst has written recently that the Congress is not a party of the opposition. Imagine if Rafale, Supriya, had been in the hands of the BJP. They would have gherowed the government day in and day out. They wouldn't have let the government function.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But the opposition stand on Rafale has been half-hearted, frankly.
Absolutely.
They've shot off the shoulders of Prashant Bhushan and Yashwant Sinha.
All right. Yeah, you're right there. And you know, you just had Sonia Gandhi today lead that protest. Otherwise, it was only Rahul Gandhi who was doing that, and I think that has also been overshadowed by what Mr. Sinha and Mr. Shourie are doing. But, you know, before I move on to Rafale, and I think Rafale, yes, and I think Rafale is really the big offshoot of this monsoon session, the way it's now being discussed, the kind of commentary it's generating, the voices of protest that are coming from former members of the NDA. I'm going to discuss that in just a bit. But Neerja Chaudhary, I have a quick question for you. The session started off on murmurs of miffed NDA factions. Mr. Ketkar was right in pointing out there that during the no confidence motion, we had the Sena, its oldest ally, stage a walkout. We had the BJD not participate. So, you know, these weren't allies really. They weren't really acting in cahoot with the government. Yes, the government didn't need the numbers either, but, you know, they showed their protest. They were miffed. By the end of the monsoon session, it really looks like hatchets have been buried and the entire NDA flock is being held together. Is that a wrong reading?
No, I think that's a correct reading because Shiv Sena in the deputy chairperson's election voted with the BJP. They did not abstain with the BJP. So barring TDP, which is true, which has deserted the NDA and gone to the other side, the rest of the allies are with the BJP. And in addition, the BJP had two of these parties voting with. Now you can say this election was not by the secret ballot. Had it been held by secret ballot and not as an open election, it's possible that who knows whether these parties would have gone with the opposition, because they may not at this juncture, for reasons that may be political or not political, want to antagonize the government at the center. It is quite possible they may keep their options open for the future. But I say this to Mr. Kumar Ketkar, if you did not have the numbers and you knew this at the beginning, why not make a virtue out of necessity and actually go for a consensus candidate when in the beginning the government was offering you. Later it was a different story. But I think as the Prime Minister picked up the phone, talked to Naveen Patnaik, met Chandrasekhar Rao, Anna DMK, he talked to all the allies, Uddhav Thackeray, Rahul Gandhi did not do so. And if people like us who are maybe well-wishers of the opposition would want the opposition to succeed, when we criticize the opposition, you say we are batting on the other side. I say to you, if not more than the 110 million people who voted for the Congress party in 2014, you at least owe it to them, each one of those people, to come up to scratch. And time after time you don't come up to scratch. You are no match for this duo. Completely formidable, 24/7 politicians, huge machinery. How are you going to face this? You know, the people of India want an answer in a democracy. You know, don't clutch on to straws and say we did very good, a little bit of very good, a little bit of improvement, not good enough.
Okay, that's a spirited point made there by Neerja Chaudhary. And Kumar Ketkar, only fair I let you respond. Zafar, I'm going to come to you, but you know, you allow me this indulgence. I think it's only fair that Kumar Ketkar responds to that spirited point made there by Neerja Chaudhary. Chakshu, we'll come to you as well. Let's get the politics out of the way. Kumar Ketkar, quick response to what Neerja Chaudhary said.
Well, actually what Nirja said apparently is and superficially quite correct in the sense that in no confidence motion it was quite obvious that Congress is not going to win. Congress was not the party which started the no confidence debate. It was by Telugu Desam. So in any case the opposition would not win no confidence motion is quite obvious with 44 and now 48 seats of Congress in Lok Sabha. I think the question is not a contest, not a question of winning and losing. Similarly in deputy chairman it was obvious even if Congress had phoned up as she wanted or others, it was clear that if there was a contest, Congress or opposition was bound to lose. So to say that they did not have a strategy, they could have won, it is absurd, completely absurd. They could not have won. The numbers were not with them. So just because numbers are not with them, you have to make a virtue out of necessity and pretend that you are actually working for consensus would have been accepting that you are on a weak ground. Here nothing wrong in having a contest. It's a democratic process. A contest is a contest. Actually, they saw who is with them and who is not with them or who is not likely to be with them. In any case, deputy chairman's election has nothing to do with 2019 alliances. 2019 alliances are completely different. Nobody knows how many and how long the NDA partners will remain with them, and nobody knows how many people will actually join Mahagathbandhan led by Congress or led by somebody else. So I think these debates of losing and winning and having killer instinct and not, Congress never had a killer instinct even in the past. Even during Vajpayee's time, everybody thought in 2004 Vajpayee was obviously going to win because he was a towering figure and Sonia Gandhi was a foreigner. In 2004, nobody thought Sonia Gandhi's opposition alliance will actually win. Nobody thought. And actually it did not win many seats. 145 to Congress and 138 to BJP. Yeah. But it was pre-poll alliances done by Sonia Gandhi that made 2004 different. So I think let us not bring all these victories and opposition and victories and losing as you know.
Okay. I think Nirja Chaudhary qualified her statement by saying that she is a sympathizer and a well-wisher, and I think that is how the opposition must take this. And you know, Mr. Modi is no Mr. Vajpayee, and the opposition knows that a lot better than all us commentators. But let me take this across to Zafar Islam. Country needs an opposition. I agree with you there. Absolutely. I completely agree with you there. But let me take this across to Zafar Islam. And Sayyid Zafar Islam, my apologies to keep you waiting, but I have some back-to-back questions for you. Rafale is the other big issue out of this monsoon session. It is now being debated, called a scam by sections of the Indian polity. Is that the big let-off from the monsoon session? You've got former NDA ministers, Arun Shourie and Yashwant Sinha, calling it a scandal, calling it a scam, also saying this actually compromises national security. Are you going to be in denial?
Well, it's not the question of denial. First of all, you have to understand the basic understanding, the Congress party which is not able to understand that they are the one who had signed the confidentiality agreement in 2008. And whatever modification had happened in 2016, the subsequent agreement also have the same clause. If you have a covenant which restricts you from parting with all the details, then you are bound to follow that. It's a restrictive clause which has not been put by us. It has been put by the UPA in 2008. And we just followed the same agreement in 2016. But what is important for all of us to realize that there are some sensitive information which cannot be divulged and made it to public purely because this is of sensitive nature. What capability you have been able to arrange subsequently something which no country should know. It is only the army, military and the navy and the air force should know what is the capability we have been able to achieve. In terms of pricing and all, with the base cost, what they were paying, we are paying only the 91% of that cost. So we have negotiated well. It's a superb deal.
Let you get into the pricing debate because that's a separate debate in itself. No.
That the capability which we have been able to
Sayyid Zafar Islam.
Sorry.
No, Sayyid Zafar Islam, let's not make this a Rafale controversy. Let's not make this a controversy on whether it was barebone, what were the attachments, because, you know, I've done my research on that. Let's not make it that, but you have a point to go, you know, on the larger sentiment. Let's not get into the Rafale debate is all I'm saying, because we are discussing the monsoon session. Rafale is a debate in itself. We've done many of those. And, you know, stray comments here and there don't qualify that debate. This is a matter of national security. But I have a follow-up to ask of you. Why isn't your government coming clear on the Rafale controversy, which is the bone of contention at present? You're being attacked by the opposition. You know, charges of scam are being alleged at you. This could help Parliament function majorly. I mean, you know, why is it that you've got your former ministers? Forget about the opposition. It's not just the Congress and the, you know, the BSP and the SP that's hurling charges at you. You've got your former NDA ministers, Arun Shourie and Yashwant Sinha, who've called it a scandal, who said this compromises national security. Uske liye aap kya kahenge? Because the government is giving different comments every time.
Supriya, the way you are dramatizing
about
our no. The way you are dramatizing about the former NDA minister, you know it well. Where do they stand? And how do they react? How do they behave? And what is their conduct? And what is their comments? I mean, I don't want to comment on their comments purely because everyone knows today their comments are not taken seriously by the party, because they are working against the interests of the party. I mean, who will give weightage to the statement made by Mr. Arun Shourie or for that matter Yashwant Sinha? Because there are people who work against the interests of the party. Somebody like these two people. I mean, do you really want to comment on those statements made by them? But having said that, whatever needs to be made public has been made public. Something which cannot be made public cannot be made public under no circumstances, purely because there is a confidentiality clause. I mean, where is the question of issue of Rafale? Rafale is, if the opposition is demanding, they need to understand what is the constraint we have. It is not the first time. Is it the first time that the government is not sharing the details? There are many instances during UPA and Congress regime where they have on the floor of the parliament, they have declined that this is a sensitive information, we cannot divulge. So that flexibility should be retained by the government, and government is restricted purely because of the clause which we have. Otherwise we could have made it public. But if you make it public, you will certainly compromise with the national security. Are you going to do
For
it?
Islam, that's the party line. I take that.
Posing with to the opposition parties.
Okay, Zafar Islam, allow me to interpret. I know that's the party line, and again, I don't want this to become I don't want Rafale to hijack this debate. We've done debates on that, and probably there's a merit for one more in light of the new charges presented by Yashwant Sinha and Arun Shourie. And I agree, I'm sure BJP doesn't take those charges seriously, but I'm sure rest of the country should, because they're senior leaders, former leaders of your party. But let's move aside. Chakshu Roy, so far in the 16th Lok Sabha, 39 ordinances have been issued. That's an average of nearly 10 ordinances per year. That's the highest, we are told, since the United Front ruled from 1996 to 98, when 77 ordinances were issued. So if governance in some sense has to flow through the sort of writ of ordinances rather than through the parliamentary process, isn't it in some sense a failure of lawmakers and the government to ensure smooth functioning of the parliament? I mean, where does the buck stop?
I think that's an important point. Let's look at ordinances in two light. One, are we making ordinances because our lawmaking process is extremely reactive rather than being proactive, and we can't plan for things in advance, and we have to for a number of issues we have to wait for the fact that a session is over, and before the next session comes in we have to squeeze in ordinances. So are we reactive in lawmaking, or are we proactive in lawmaking? If we were proactive in lawmaking, a lot of these things can be timetabled, they can be planned in advance, an agenda could be circulated, political census built before a session begins, and then these legislations can be taken to parliament. And that then brings me to a connected point. And the connected point is, while a number of legislations are getting passed, as I mentioned earlier, they are not getting, enough scrutiny in parliamentary committees. And when scrutiny only happens on the floor of the House, it's not as in-depth. It is, there's a lot of political overtones to that scrutiny. But when it happens in parliamentary standing committees, not only is it technical, outside experts, the government, everybody can come and testify to the committee. So the law gets a lot more strengthened. And let's also remember, this parliament is coming to an end, right? I mean, the winter session will probably the last full session where the government will have the liberty to transact legislative business. I was listening to the Rajya Sabha debate today, and there was, one demand about, referring the issue of, the defense deal to a joint parliamentary committee. Now, the last time a joint parliamentary committee was to be made, it was in 2010, and that 2010 winter session, that entire session was completely washed out without any legislative business getting done. And the amount of legislative business that is currently pending before Parliament is about 60 odd bills. I was looking at some numbers. The Ministry of Law and Justice has about 11 bills. Health and Family Welfare is about 10. Labour and Employment has got another 7. So it's not as if the Parliament does not have, a full set of things to consider. And, just a side point, at the beginning of this debate, we talked about the no confidence motion and, the election of the deputy chair. I just wanted to kind of, highlight the fact that it is the responsibility of Parliament, to test whether the Council of Ministers, has the confidence of the House. And the idea of that test is not only to either, defeat the government, but the idea is really to test as to, what are the government's responses. And, sometimes, the government's able to make its point, sometimes the opposition's able to make its point. But the idea of, electing the deputy chair, while it is an election, yes, I consider it more as a collaborative exercise, where members of one house, pick one of their colleague, to manage, the business of the house. So maybe, different things and, a common interpretation of those things may or may not be correct, is my opinion.
Indeed, that's a good point you're bringing to this debate. So it's always good to hear enriching opinions. But let me turn focus and talk about an issue that I feel very strongly about, and that is women. And somehow I feel that politicians... One second. Okay, come in very quickly. 30 seconds, Zafar Islam, because... come in, Zafar. Aiye.
See, I heard him.
Zafar, come in, you can talk.
The comment made by the expert. What is more important for all? Yeah, I'm speaking. See, what is more important for all of us to realize that the responsibility of the elected legislators and the elected lawmakers is to pass the legislation, pass the bill and make it legislation. But unfortunately, the principal opposition party, which is Congress in the Rajya Sabha, if you see the number of outstanding bill, which is huge in the Rajya Sabha, and a lot of bills have been passed in the Lok Sabha. That only suggests that the NDA government is extremely keen and sincere to pass those bills to make it legislation. But we are stuck in Rajya Sabha purely because the opposition parties are not behaving responsibly, particularly the principal opposition party, which is the responsibility of lawmakers.
Okay. No, Zafar, 1 second.
Yes, please.
No, Zafar, 1 second. Don't take the high moral ground here. It's not as if you're very keen. You have the numbers in Lok Sabha, which is why you can pass. You don't have the numbers in the Rajya Sabha, so many accuse you of bringing important legislation in the form of money bill. You had no business bringing GST and Aadhaar as a money bill. That is what you've done, and which is why you vexed the opposition as well. Opposition has a role to play. 1 second. I am not disputing that. Opposition has a responsible role to play. You did not play a very responsible role when UPA was in power, but even then, two wrongs can't make a right. But the reality also is you've tried to circumvent the opposition. Why did you bring GST and Aadhaar as a money bill? Because you wanted to circumvent the Rajya Sabha. No, this is not. No, 1 second. Because you want responsible to the opposition, how do you expect them to be responsible to you? No, 1 second. I want to move to a topic that I feel very strongly about, and that is women. And I always feel that politicians across the spectrum always... Let me finish. Zafar, I'm talking about an important topic now. Politicians across the spectrum just never seem to pay attention to women issues. And Mr. Ketkar, I have a question for you. What explains the Congress's stance on the triple talaq bill? You've been accused of stalling the bill. 21 bills have passed. This has been stalled. And this despite the fact that the government has given in to a lot of your demands, which is A, to make it bailable, which is at the FIR procedure. Why is the Congress objecting to it? Is this a delaying tactic? Because many people are saying that it could be a lose-lose, just like post-Shah Bano verdict in 1986, and you want to play it, and you want to play it very safe. 1 second, Mr. Ketkar.
I don't. Come on, Congress has not stalled. Congress has not stalled triple talaq bill. They have not been able to present. In fact, what the point that you made is absolutely correct. They were afraid of debate in Rajya Sabha because in Rajya Sabha they are not in a strong majority. In Lok Sabha they can actually, because Congress is in such a small numbers. So question of Rajya Sabha not debating, having only 70% success, because they do not want debate in Rajya Sabha, whether it is triple talaq or any other issue, and that's why the success was only 70%. Let us not confuse the two issues. Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha are two different things. They are confident in Lok Sabha. They are absolutely not confident. That's why chairman was constantly adjourning. Out of these 18 days, how many sessions were wasted because of just adjournments? Many of the debates could not be held on many of the bills because adjournments were taking place constantly. We used to join the Rajya Sabha 11 o'clock, 11:05 it is adjourned, 12:05 it is adjourned, 2:30 it is adjourned. What the hell was going on? So that was because the chairman was trying to promote and protect the BJP government, Narendra Modi government, and therefore Rafale deal, when notice was served under 267, that was not even taken for debate for even understanding. He could have simply said, okay, this issue I accept and tomorrow we'll debate. And the question is not security and price. The question is one private company was handed over the entire deal just 7 days before the company was formed. So there are too many issues, not just security.
We are talking about
and the
triple
question of
talaq
price
right now.
was never a question which was a part of the security. Was part of the security. The point is, I'm not talking of Rafale deal. You have had enough number of debates on Rafale. The question is, the Rajya Sabha chairman representing BJP was afraid that Rafale deal and many other bills will be discussed and they will be on a mat. They will be on defensive. They do not want to be on defensive.
You're not answering the question,
they belong
but
to
let's
the
take this
so-called
forward.
killer instinct.
Okay,
So killer instinct cannot afford to be on defensive.
But you're not answering the specific question. Chagrika, there is a chance that the triple talaq bill might lapse, since technically we have only one more session to go. That's the winter session for this government. The government will probably bring in an emergency executive order to enact the law. But how do you see the fate of this crucial bill, and should we just give up any hope of this bill being passed before the 2019 session?
Sandeep, it's all politics, politics and more politics. I mean, when does the government bring the triple talaq bill? On the last day of the session. They know it's not going to be passed on the last day of the session. Obviously, the government is trying to play some clever game. When does the opposition initiate its Rafale protest? On the last day of the session. So on the last day of the session, you bring up these subjects because you want to keep the pot boiling in an election year and you want to keep the politics going. At the end of the day, does any party really want to get the triple talaq bill passed, or do they just want to keep the pot boiling, keep the controversy going, keep the appeasement theory on the one side and the sort of the Congress's objections on the other side, and milk this in a way in an election year for political benefit, as on the Rafale? I mean, why have this protest? Why does Sonia Gandhi join the protest on the last day? I mean, what were you doing all this time on the Rafale deal is the question we must ask the opposition. Where is the protest on the Rafale deal in the House? You're firing off the shoulder of Prashant Bhushan, Arun Shuri and Yashwant Sinha. You don't have the guts to take it up in the House. You cannot take it up in the House because you are not united. You see, the opposition lacks...
Where is the question of guts?
The opposition lacks unity, it lacks strategy, it lacks finesse, it lacks proper floor coordination and management. No, Kumar, think about it. Imagine if BJP had got Rafale deal. If you were in power and BJP had Rafale deal, there would have been a gherao of the government every day. A very senior analyst was telling me. But then, the question is, are you able to be an opposition?
You mean to say Congress should imitate BJP?
Can you be an opposition?
Do you mean to say that Congress should be as irresponsible?
But can you be an opposition? That's what you have to ask yourself. Not irresponsible, but you have to be an opposition.
I think the Congress doesn't have it.
You
One
have
second.
to be on the Rafale deal.
Sagarika,
then what? After that what? After Jhappi what?
Sagarika.
What happened after the Jhappi?
Sagarika and Kumar Ketkar. Okay, Sagarika and Kumar Ketkar, please let me come in. Please let me come in, Sagarika and Kumar Ketkar. You both have a very strong point of view there. The reality, the reality really is that Sagarika has raised an important point, which is everything is politicking. You know, the timing of bringing the triple talaq or the timing of Sonia Gandhi's protest, it's all politicking, the last day. And you know, Sagarika, before I go to Neera Chaudhary for just that response, I think the larger point is that Congress doesn't have it in it to be, you know, effective opposition. They've always been in government. They don't know how to oppose. You are talking about what BJP would have done with Rafale. They're still keeping Bofors alive. And the Congress has not been able to do that to the BJP with Rafale. So in any case, let me just go across to Neera Chaudhary. And Neera Chaudhary, the point that Sagarika makes is an important point. That, you know, nobody wants, किसी को भला नहीं चाहिए मुसलमान औरत का या हिंदू औरत का या एक women's reservation bill का. ये सब politics है. It's all about politicking. The timing of the bill, the last day, it was never going to go through. The last day of leading a protest on Rafale. Why now? This was just for the cameras. This wasn't for the government. This wasn't to put the point across, because NDA ministers are now talking about it. So what difference does it make that some motley 40 MPs of the Congress party go out there and make a protest?
You know, this morning when we were sitting in the Parliament building, it was being discussed whether the session will get extended by a day to Monday in order for this bill to be taken up. And then whatever be the considerations, it was decided not to. I was sitting next to one of the senior Congress leaders, and he said that we have not been asked what our view is after the amendments. We have not been formally asked. So what was happening? It's been deferred to winter session of Parliament. Now we must also remember that the BJD and the Anna DMK had last year found flaws in this bill. They wanted changes to be made. Now did the government, I'm only asking a question, did the government decide let's defer it rather than expose the fact that the BJD and Anna DMK, which have just now come to our aid and our support, suddenly find themselves on the other side? So the advantage of winning over potential non-aligned allies, we may lose. And in between the monsoon session and the winter session of Parliament, I can imagine the BJP will go to town on the triple talaq, that we want to bring this, we've diluted it, we've taken the amendments of the opposition on board, and yet the opposition doesn't want to pass it. So they will certainly go to town on this. One last word I want to make on Rafale. What is to stop the government calling a handful of opposition leaders completely in camera, in confidence, and say, these are the confidentiality clauses which have a bearing on security. This is not to be made public, but this is what we have signed, if everything is above board. Of course, they have not answered the question why it should have been given to a company which had no experience of anything to do with defense instead of HAL. But that apart, you know, these kind of things have been done in the past by prime ministers, taking a few people in the opposition in confidence to lay the whole matter to rest. Why can it not be done now?
Fantastic point you're making, and I wonder if the BJP would act on that point. But Chakshu, we're running out of time. Let's get closing comments. First from you, the broader question which we're trying to debate is how to get more productivity out of sessions of Parliament. Do you think there should be some sort of an incentive mechanism or a deterrence mechanism to force lawmakers to do what they're supposed to do, which is debate and pass bills? How do we incentivize good behavior?
I think it's not a question of, deterrence. The reason, our lawmakers, come to Parliament is because of a deep sense of public service. So I don't think they need to be either deterred or incentivized. I think what needs to be done is there needs to be more opportunities to be created for people, both on the treasury side and the opposition side, to get together and discuss a whole range of things. I think one of the things that happens is that, since Parliament meets for such few days in a year, about 70 days in a year, the opportunity to actually discuss legislation only arises about 3 days before the session, when there's an all-party meeting of the leaders to discuss as to what the agenda is going to be. So can we create more opportunities for discussions to take place between parties formally on what, what business is going to get transacted into the House? The second part, what Supriya was raising is what happens to the triple talaq bill. Now, if the government has cleared, the cabinet has cleared amendments to the bill, those amendments will have to be moved in Rajya Sabha, which is going to happen in the winter session. Now, the winter session is going to be possibly a slightly curtailed session because there's going to be state elections. So in a short session, the government will have the responsibility of getting amendments to Rajya Sabha and then taking that amended bill back to Lok Sabha to get it passed through there. And if the government's not able to do that, any bill which is pending in Rajya Sabha, lapses at the end of the term of the Lok Sabha. And there are about, close to, 50 odd pieces of legislation which are pending. So not only is the fate of the Triple Talaq bill, but many other legislation depending on the fact as to what's going to happen in the winter session.
Okay, fair point indeed. Very quickly, I've just got the last 1.5 minutes on the show, and I request Mr. Ketkar and Zafar Islam to please be brief. Mr. Ketkar, do you see the smooth functioning of Parliament, which has passed about 21 odd legislation, as a step towards bridging the trust deficit that's so evident between the Treasury and the opposition benches?
Well, actually, smooth functioning happened only in the last phase and not earlier. That's an important point. Secondly, Women's Reservation Bill was never presented, not at all presented, not even discussed. He talks about moral high ground he takes on social issues. Then why not Triple Talaq and Women's Reservation Bill both presented? Because Triple Talaq Bill can communalize and polarize the issue, whereas Women's Reservation Bill is actually a very secular issue. Thirdly, Modi and Modi's henchmen in the party think that it can be run, Parliament can be run like Gujarat Assembly was run by Narendra Modi for 12 years. So I think that is an approach towards Parliament. They do not send things to Standing Committee. More than 70 issues were supposed to be discussed by Standing Committee. Only less than 10 were actually sent to Standing Committee. So Standing Committee is ignored. Next time Parliament will be ignored.
Okay. You're saying this doesn't mean that the trust deficit has been bridged. Let's keep the politics aside for a moment. Aside, Zafar Islam, last question to you. You won the no confidence vote. You won the election of the Rajya Sabha deputy chair. But 5 years from now, people won't remember this session for either of them. People will remember this session only for the jhappi of Rahul Gandhi. Will you concede that?
Well, two things I would like to. First of all, Mr. Ketkar, now a member of Rajya Sabha, a lawmaker, I think he should restrain some of the words he are using, Modi's henchmen. I think you should behave like a lawmaker, unlike the earlier days when you were just a journalist. So, and coming away from that, let me also tell you that Jhappi was the way he hugged the Honorable Prime Minister. That only exposes him, because if you see the body language, see his conduct after the hug, it only exposes him because it was a planned strategy and he didn't execute well. And the wink only suggests that it was all strategized by the Congress party, and they completely fell flat on their face, because neither he hugged properly nor he executed it properly, and he made mockery of himself. These kind of things will be remembered, not the hug which he had given to Prime Minister, because had he been natural the way he was asking him to get up, and the entire body language was only exposing him. And secondly, to make it more productive, I think the Congress legislator, the lawmaker.
Okay. No, I'm sorry, I'll have to come in there and cut you short. Such is the state of Indian polity that a hug gets politicized on both sides. Rahul Gandhi hugs the Prime Minister, comes back, sits in the opposition benches and then winks and undoes whatever he's done. The Prime Minister the very next day goes to his constituency and criticizes that hug. Such is the state of Indian polity. But we as viewers and we as stakeholders don't want the hug. We don't want the wink. We don't want the opposition and the Treasury to even sit and have that customary tea together. We want legislation, because that is what we've elected you for. For every vote that we cast, we want action. Action-oriented results, action-oriented agenda is what we as Indians set for you. Follow that.
On that note, I want to thank our wonderful panel this evening, Eja Chaudhary, Sagarika Ghosh, Kumar Ketkar, Chakshu Roy and Syed Zafar Islam for participating in what really was a fiery edition of the India Development Debate. Time out. Up next is Top 10 at 10. Keep it with ET now. Good night.